How you doing, Miss Green?
I'm doing well, Will. How you doing?
Doing fine. I just read, is it Ms. or Mrs.? I want to make sure I get the title right.
Man, you're gonna put all my business out. It's a miss.
All right, Ms. Hey, I just want to be informed. Just
It's
want to
okay.
make sure.
It's all good.
Thank you. Let's get right to it, shall we?
Yeah.
So, from some of the data you've been able to assess up to this point, what did you see?
Wow. Well, yesterday's census release was a fascinating snapshot of the United States. This America is more diverse and more multiracial than ever before. So these trends that we've been hearing about, the browning of America and all that, that we've seen over this last decade have no signs of slowing down. In fact, many would say that we have crossed a tipping point, a line of no return that will basically demand new ways, new paradigms for setting public policy and decision making. Um, so we're already beginning to see some of these implications. This fight to deny the browning of America. The multiracial population was measured at 9 million in 2010, and right now is 33.8 million, which was a 276% increase. So we're seeing things like voter suppression, denying voting rights to Black and brown populations. We're seeing increased domestic terrorism. And, all of this is a reflection of the changes, the demographic changes that are occurring in the United States. And on the other hand, we're seeing more diverse coalition building and political activism from our youth who are, saying we're not going back to those days. So that's what we're seeing, the actualization of this browning. We saw that America is aging, especially the white population. And for the first time in probably the history of this country, the white population dipped below a 60% majority race. So they're now 57%. The country is now 57% white. We've seen growth taking place in large metropolitan areas. Black people, as we know, we've known this. We didn't need anybody to tell us that we're moving back down south, and so all of this portends major shifts in economic and public policy, cultural trends, health, as we emerge out of the COVID pandemic, housing, political leadership, every aspect of our daily life. So, that's the reality of those numbers.
I forgot for those who may have missed, as a formal introduction of Ms. Jeri Green, she's senior advisor for the National Urban League for the 2020 census. And is it been 22 years you worked for the Census Bureau?
I did. I was a senior manager. I worked with vulnerable populations, working with all of our populations, racial and ethnic groups, to identify unique challenges, how, the obstacles that we see from our side on why we don't respond, why we distrust the census. How can the Census Bureau improve increase our count? And that was the side I worked with, working with civil rights organizations and national leaders on issues across, from American Indians to our own population, African Americans and Latinos, Asians, everybody.
Now, you mentioned a little bit about trust. Mm-hmm. How do you ensure our Black community can trust the census individuals who went out and knocked on their doors to get some of this data, to summarize that what you say will bring money back to your community?
Yes. Well, I have to tell you, having worked on the inside, the first thing is getting input into the process. Before you even go out there and knock on doors, the Census Bureau has to conduct a lot of research to determine what those issues are. So I recall I was there until 2017. I figured I could do more from an advocacy standpoint on the outside, because things got a little crazy in 2016, as we all know. But you have to do your research. And there was a study called the Census Bureau, Census Barriers, Attitudes, and Motivations, that was conducted, CBAMS, to find out from different populations why people were not responding to the census, why they didn't trust it. And I found very interesting that in the Black population, we just think, the research showed that we thought that if you fill out the census form, something bad is going to happen to you. That was right off the bat. That thing, government, our history with the government, whether it's, COVID, the Tuskegee experiment with COVID, with our reluctance to get the vaccination, or anyway, our collective historic memory about how we are treated in this country says, maybe I don't want to give the government my name. Maybe I don't want to do that. And then in comes another a presidential administration that weaponized the census. The former Trump administration weaponized the census and tried to remove immigrants who didn't have status from the census count, and also interfered with a full and complete count of our vulnerable population. So much so that the National Urban League filed a suit against the census, the Trump administration, to ensure that all of us were counted. So what can you do? One of the things that the Census Bureau did was to try to hire people from the community. Don't send random folk out into our community asking us questions. Try to get the people who live in the community, who know the community, and who know the values and the culture to go in. That was a big thing. And then to just keep pounding away on messaging. And that's what our national organizations did, that your information is safe. We're not going to share it with law. The Census Bureau is not going to share it with law enforcement people. You're not going to get put out of your housing. Those kind of things, that the Census Bureau cannot share your data. Those were the key things.
Now, read some reaction yesterday that a lot of advocates were very pleased, and some of them said, we knew America was brown. That was the easy part. We knew that. But there's still some concerns. What are a few concerns that you have, just in general?
Well, I'll give you some specific examples. We have to be still concerned about the accuracy of the count. Let's look at DC for an example. So according to census data, Ward 7 may have lost population in the district and did not experience the growth of other wards, for example. Well, we know in DC that, this is one of the top gentrified localities in the country, Washington, DC. So is the Ward 7 count, is that due to an undercount east of the river? And if you look, more broadly, nationally, we know that more than a third of the Black population is located in the South, where the pandemic ran. And according to Dr. V, we listened to Dr. V, it's still running its course throughout our communities. And in the South, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, we're waiting. The National Urban League and other civil rights organizations are waiting on additional data releases from census to determine the extent of an undercount in these areas. We're also looking at predominantly Black communities in Michigan, California, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Detroit, LA. So because we know that the impact of an undercounted community has significant economic and political ramifications. Over $1.5 trillion a year are allocated to local governments and state governments based on the census count. We're talking about, Pell Grants. We're talking about Section 8 housing vouchers, rural electricity, everything. It runs the gamut. And we also know that a good census count is all about representation, power, political power. And so those are the numbers. We're looking at these numbers to find out what that undercount is for our
There's so many questions I have, but because of time, I have one more question. I thank you. Very interesting.
I'll be brief.
Okay. Now, forgot to mention you're a native Washingtonian as well.
I certainly am.
So you know the district inside and out, just like Mrs. Denise Rolark Barnes.
Well, I get lost going uptown sometimes, but my heart is southeast.
Now, I don't know if you got to see in terms of the district leads the nation in terms of the highest percentage of Blacks. I think it was 41%.
Yeah.
However, the district also led the nation. I think it was 18% increase in white. Now, what's the economy there? Can you summarize that for us, please, before you go?
So you're saying how could we also have the highest percentage of Blacks and the highest percentage of white? Well, a lot now. The percentages are interesting. I'm not a statistician, but the high percentage of Black people could be a large number of the Latino population that's cutting into, the white population. That's possible. I was here when we were Chocolate City and it was over 90% Black. So, we've seen a lot. But I'll tell you one thing, that you didn't mention, and that is the percentage of adults in DC that are over 18, and what that means.
Thank you.
Okay, that's the problem. The 18 and older figure, of course, we know that the nation is aging, but we also need to understand that last census, 6.3% of all Black children were not counted in the census. So this certainly could contribute to a number that says that the 18 and older is a big, like 83.1% of the DC population is over 18. Right. And it could mean that our Black kids are not being counted. People are not, during the pandemic, we all had to come together. We had to move over. We had to scoot over. Somebody had to sleep here, in many of our communities. And maybe Black children were not counted. Maybe we didn't put everybody on. Maybe we didn't put the play cousins down on the census count. Maybe we didn't even, but we know that, I believe, we know that Black children have been undercounted increasingly in the census. And that might be why the figure that they're 83.1% of our population is 18 and over. It is a reflection possibly that that the Census Bureau did not count Black children effectively.
Wow, we can keep talking about this for hours. Ms. Jeri Green, thank you so much. Very appreciate your time. Take care now.
Take care. Thank you.